Space Pope 20K is on the show. Space Pope 20K, where are you calling from? Where are you calling from, Space Pope 20K?
I am calling from Flint, Michigan.
Flint, Michigan. You've been on the show before.
I have indeed.
Okay. What do you want to talk about on the show?
So, I know that we have Reginald in the chat, and sorry, Reggie, but I'm here to roast TSM because they are not making the playoffs this year. This is not, we're going to playoffs and we're bustering out in the first round. Like, they're not getting in whatsoever.
Can you get a little closer to your mic? I turned you up, but you're still a little quiet.
Yeah, my headset is a little worn out. I've already got myself set up to
Reginald's response was "fuck you." That was what he wrote in chat. So, I guess you're
esports. Let's go.
You're off to a rough start with them. Okay, so why is TSM not making playoffs this year?
All right, so, so with TSM, let's just start top to bottom. And with top, you have Broken Blade. I don't think Broken Blade is a terrible player, and I'm not sitting here roasting his career. However, this is not going to be C9 Jack pulling licorice out of thin air. Broken Blade is a proven commodity, and Broken Blade is already very close to, in my opinion, the ceiling of his career. He's been playing in a region with little to no competition, and I don't see him having the same level of performance against players like Someday, Licorice, Haunter, and Hoonie, and so on.
Can't you make the argument then that, like, if he's been playing in a region where he hasn't had real competition, we haven't seen the best out of him yet?
I think we have seen the best of Broken Blade.
Okay. All right, so continue. Or is it just is that all it? It's Broken Blade. That's the reason they're not making playoffs.
No, we could go further, and statistically, and I could be a little wrong, but I'm pretty sure I looked this up beforehand. Greg dealt the least damage of any jungler that played the same number of games as him.
Yeah, Greg's not starting though.
I saw that press release. That was a pretty interesting move. If he is injured, I do hope he gets better. I'm not here to spite these people as humans. They are human beings. I understand that, but we're talking just athletic performance.
Okay.
I don't think Acadian is a fit for TSM in the same way that Dardoch would not be a fit for TSM. Acadian to me is Diet Svenskeren, and Svenskeren has already moved on to greener pastures with his champion pool, such as Graves and the Lee Sin and things like that.
Okay, let's pause really quickly before we progress, and I want to hear from Mark and Dash. Is Acadian Diet Svenskeren, which is an interesting way of describing him.
I can kind of see what Spaceover was saying in terms of some of the champ pool similarities when you say things like the Graves and the Lee Sin, but I think that's mostly where their similarities stop. I think Acadian's a little bit more aggressive in terms of trying to find first bloods in the early game and things like that. And then I think
Acadian feels a little bit more lane focused. Sven feels a little bit more jungle control focused. Sven still likes to fight, but we used to all the time talk about how part of Sven's lack of success on TSM was that he was going for invades that couldn't be supported by the team and he would die. But he wants to pressure the other jungler, get in their face, but he can build his advantage through stealing camps. I definitely see Acadian as I want to play something that can get into lanes early, get my laner's advantages, and snowball from there.
Yeah, I think one of the things for me is Ben feels a lot of times like a product of the team that he's in terms of how good he looks or bad. When TSM struggled in 2016 spring, everyone thought Sven sucked. He had the most deaths in the league combined with Yellow Star. Both of them were 1-2 in the league in deaths.
Right.
And then 2016 summer hits and he's a fucking god, diving bot lane over and over with Bjergsen. And I think the same thing happened to him towards the end of tenure in TSM when they became super passive. He was trying to jumpstart stuff and it just didn't look good. Whereas I don't think Acadian is quite I think he kind of reacts to what his team is doing a little bit more for better or worse. Where if his team doesn't have pressure and he's scared to go in, I think Sven will go in and still fucking kill himself. Whereas Acadian will be oh man, I can't do anything. I can't go anywhere. I have no pressure. I think he plays to his team better, for better or worse.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And then I think the point on Broken Blade is it's a curious one. I mean, I can definitely see defending it, right? But that's more just I guess from where I stand, that's do I have an optimistic outlook or a pessimistic outlook on this guy's future? Because I don't know, as Travis pointed out, in a world where you assume he's moving into a league like the NALCS having better competition, there's the potential that that competition pushes him to grow and he becomes even better. There's also the potential for that competition to just completely smother him, right? And for him to not step up to the plate. And so I can see an argument both ways for Broken Blade. But I don't think that the success of TSM necessarily hinges on that individual player.
Right. And I think the idea, like, you can say, oh, he was standing out in a weaker region, and that's why he looked good, and then he's going to come here and get smacked down by Someday and stuff. But, like, I also think, like, the idea of a ceiling on an 18-year-old is a little crazy.
Right.
Very few people have peaked at 18. I can't think of a single player off the top of my head who was like, oh, yeah, he was at his best at 18, and it was all downhill from then.
Just a quick quip to like players who peaked early and went nowhere was Mandatory Cloud, who like absolutely destroyed people for a hot minute and then disappeared.
Yeah, but he wasn't like 18. It wasn't like an age related. Like
he did have a short window of dominance as a player. So like I understand that, but I don't remember his exact age. I want to say he was more 20, 21.
Yeah, I mean same with like Link or not Link, GG. GG was the god, and like Hotshot GG was the god of like season 1. Like players peak and valley at different times, but like as long as someone's like super dedicated to the game, and like this dude's coming up in the same era, it's not like we're talking about season 1 to season 3 when it was like we're all playing in our PJs versus like we're in team houses and stuff. So like I think like all those guys that peaked at that time too, like there were other life circumstances going on, and they were not even as young as he is now.
Reginald might have peaked at 18, by the way. I said Reginald might have peaked at 18.
Like the assertion, because I do think it's interesting, like the assertion was that TSM would not make top 6, right?
Correct.
Okay. I don't necessarily think that Broken Blade, like old TSM, take out Haunts or put in Broken Blade, that doesn't make them bottom 4 for me. So then I'm looking at the other changes they made, which is now Acadian's in for Greg due to wrist issues, and then I'm looking at Smoothie over Mithy. Do you really feel, like in my mind, I have higher hopes for Sven Smoothie Lane than Sven Mithy Lane of 2018. So to me, that's an upgrade. So I'm still trying to figure out where the overall drops out of 6 comes from.
So my opinion here is that, sure, admittedly, I think it's pretty unanimous. Mithy had what appeared to be like probably the worst like year in his like high stakes League of Legends career, right? I can't say for certain because I didn't watch his like rookie year, you know what I mean, before he made it with Sven when Sven was named Niels or whatever. Because I was not always on top of EULCS. But to me, it looked as though to me it looked like Mithy had like the worst year of his career, and I think that I don't know the inner workings. I don't know what was going on at the team house. You hear things like Mithy's hyper focused on basically teaching Greg how to jungle and play the game, and it's like detracting from his ability. And I can see people getting frustrated, like, hey, we just want to work on these things, and you have to take so many steps back and like help somebody, like drag them along with you and things. So who knows what caused that problem? I think Sven definitely is mechanically the stronger half of that duo. Always has been. And I think that Smoothie is the right kind of support to pair with Sven. So I don't think that this is a terrible decision. However, I don't necessarily know if it's going to be an upgrade or a downgrade. Like, if Mithy were to play again this year, I don't think Mithy would have looked like he did in the previous year, I think the biggest upgrade that Smoothie can offer is his ability to detract shot-calling duties away from Bjergsen, so Bjergsen can focus more on what he wants to do and allow him to feel more comfortable on mechanically intensive champions and less like kind of slow-paced, methodical control champions. So maybe there's an upgrade there. It's interesting because there's like a volatile variable in that Sven and Mithy have played together for so long. What will this duo look like? The potential is there, but there are a lot of question marks for me. I think that overall, to me, if I compared TSM's roster last year and then giving them another run this year, like, let's just say that roster stayed the same. I do think Mithy would have improved. And I think overall, this current roster is even or worse than the previous roster.
So where I got to hop in here is like, I don't think the problem with the previous roster was like player skill related at all. I think that they dragged themselves to a 4th place summer finish and gauntlet finish, through pure skill and not like having an inherent synergy. Like that team never looked like it gelled ever.
Correct.
And so like that's what makes it weird to talk about all these roster moves, because you're not Golden Guardians 10th place team looking to upgrade players with just anyone better. You're like, how do we fix the synergy problems that the team had last year and like why we didn't function well? And so that's why I don't look at Monster versus Broken Blade like who's a better player or like Mithy or Smoothie, because so many of TSM's problems were not skill related for me.
Yeah, and that's why I want to jump in and bring up the one piece of the puzzle we haven't talked about actually, which is Zig.
Yeah,
right? That's an acquisition that we haven't talked about when it comes to TSM. And again, I think this comes down to your opinion of him as a coach. And to Mark's point, if TSM has more to be gained from how we operate as a team, how we look at the game of League of Legends and choose to play it, define and develop our strategies, and overall improve as a team, like Zix could very much be a boon to that if he's the right fit for these guys, because I don't see from a pure player standpoint, from a pure roster standpoint, how this team is any worse than their last year's roster. I think you can argue that Broken Blade is a downgrade from Haunter only because of that uncertainty, that point of uncertainty for, well, he was dominant in a region that is considered worse than ours. Okay, so we call that a downgrade, but I think the bot lane, in my opinion, is a pure upgrade, assuming some points of synergy. And then I'm very curious to see how Acadian works out for this team. Like, I think he has the potential to be a very strong jungler. It's just, does he become the TSM jungler of history, right? Or does he become TSM Acadian, right? Like, does he still get to have his identity of being Acadian as a jungler within the TSM organization?
Do you have any final thoughts? Because we have stretched the conversation along a lot, Space Pope, but I appreciate you giving me the TSM topic for the week, because it's always good to get one of those in.
Our viewership needs it.
Yeah.
What I do want to say is that just for the sake of things, I think the bottom half of the LCS in terms of rosters is there's so many variables. You could have teams that could very clearly be a 5th place team, end up an 8th place team just through a matter of inches in a few split-second decisions, or a Baron stolen, and so on. If I may, my prediction for the top 6 this year, and I can defend any of the teams if you'd like, as to why they're going to beat out TSM in the top 6.
I think we have limited time, but if you want to give like a brief,
you can list them.
Yeah, list them.
Yeah, I'll list the teams. I'll list the teams. Yeah. So I think first and second, Team Liquid 100 Thieves, their rosters are absolutely terrifying. I think third and fourth is going to be down to the gauntlet, Golden Guardians and Cloud9 fighting it out for the world slot. I think CLG is going to inch their way into 6th place. And I know I've skipped 5th here. CLG is going to inch their way into 6th place. And I think Clutch in spring is going to actually finish in 5th place. But I don't know what their summer performance will look like.
Okay, who gets it in summer if not Clutch?
If not Clutch, it's pretty open. And it could be, I think, anybody but Echo Fox, which appears to be the 10th place team.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you so much, Space Pope. I really appreciate it. Any final thoughts?
No, man. You guys have a good night, and player 3, whenever you want to join, come on in.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, dude. Thanks.